What do you mean by data warehouse here? So if we are running any of the business or if we are having any of the organization, we are going to have some e-documents, or we are going to store some data and information with the help of files, folders, record, like that. All the definition of keys are important. Already we got to know about the primary key. So now we'll see about this candidate key. So as we all know that database is nothing but it is a collection of logically organized data or logically related data. Everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. Welcome back to the revision class on chapter 13, that is database concepts. I am Rohini TS, lecturer, Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So in our today's session, we are going to discuss with this chapter 13. We'll see the blueprint. So if you can see here, we are going to get two questions from part A, that is 1 mark question. You are going to get two 1 mark question from this chapter. So that will be for 2 marks. And also we are going to get one question from 2 marks. Then it will be for 2 marks. Then no need to worry about this 3 mark. We are not going to get any 3 marks question here. And if you come to the 5 mark question, you are going to get 2 questions from the part D, that is in the 5 marks question. So it will be for 10 marks. Totally you are going to get 5 questions from this chapter and it will be for 14 marks. High weighted chapter. So I will discuss regarding all the 1 mark, 2 marks as well as 5 marks question in my session. Let me get into the today's session regarding 1 mark questions now. So define tuple in a database. What do you mean by tuple here? So you have to understand, do we have any alternative name for tuple? Yes, we do. That is what we are going to call the tuple as a, or tuple as a record as well as row. So that a single entry in a table is called record or row or tuple. So these are the definition regarding, that means these are the synonyms for this tuple or a tuple. So it is a single entry in a table. So if you consider this as a table, if I am going to write these are the values, consider it has number of columns and I am going to give the value for each record or for each row, that will be considered as a tuple. Next, what is primary key? So remember dear students, whatever the types of keys we have, all the definitions are important. Either it can be asked for 1 mark, 2 marks or for 5 marks. So definition of all the keys are important here. So then what do you mean by primary key here? It is a field in a table which uniquely identifies each row or record in a database table. So that we have to satisfy one constraint when we are making any of the column as a primary key. So what is that? So column cannot have null value and it must contain the unique values. So these are the 2 conditions needs to be satisfied if I wanted to consider any of the column as a primary key. So that will see the next question. Write the symbol used to represent an entity in ER diagram. So we have entity, we have attributes and we have relationships. So when it comes to the entity, we are going to use a rectangle box in order to represent the entity. So then how to represent an attribute? That is with a symbol of eclipse. So and also we have relationship. So for that we are going to use diamond or rhombus. So these kind of question can be asked for 1 mark. Then what is schema? What do you mean by schema here? A database schema defines how data is organized within a relational database. In our Dbms, how the data is organized will be considered as what? Database schema. Next, which is the highest level of data abstraction? We have 3 levels of data abstraction. So in that, which is the highest level here? So that is view level or external level. View level or external level is the highest level of abstraction. That means it will be related to the user. They are just going to see what they just wanted to operate. So instead of that, they will not get to know what has been happened in the background. So that view level or external level is an example for this highest level of abstraction. Next, what do you mean by data mining here? What is the process of data mining or define data mining? So data mining is the process of discovering interesting patterns and knowledge from large amount of data. So when we are discovering any of the interesting patterns or knowledge from large amount of data or a massive amount of data, then that process is considered as what? Data mining. Next we'll see what is database. What do you mean by database here? So database is a collection of logically related data organized in a way that data can be easily accessed, managed and updated. So database is a collection of logically related data that needs to be related to each other logically, and which will going to be organized in a view or a way that data will going to be must be easily accessed, updated and needs to be managed easily. Next question, mention any one Dbms software. So here I have listed out number of Dbms software. Out of this you can write any one. So it include MySQL, Oracle, DBase. So these are the example. Out of this you can write any one in order to get 1 mark. Next question, define data warehouse. What do you mean by data warehouse here? So if you are running any of the business or if you are having any of the organization, we are going to have some e-documents, or we are going to store some data and information with the help of files, folders, record like that. So here data warehouse is nothing but it is a repository of an organization electronically stored data. It will going to hold the data and information of an organization which consists of electronically stored data. It's all about 1 mark question. We'll move to the 2 marks question now. So in 2 marks question, you can see that it's most frequently asked question, that is what do you mean by data and information. Along with that, the question can be asked in this way also, how data is different from information. So different in the sense what, they're just asking the difference between data as well as the information, or they ask the question directly like define data and information. But whatever the question could be, but you must be able to answer this kind of question here. Then what is data and what do you mean by information? So if I say sugar cane, so that is what a data. So after processing, after grinding, blending, we are going to get sugar cane juice. That is information. So you can see here, data is a collection of facts, figures, statistics, which can be processed in order to produce a meaningful information. So data is just a raw fact that needs to be processed, but information is what? Processed data. It's already processed, blended, and we are going to have only the content which is required for us. That is what? Information. It's a processed data which will going to be stored and transmitted by a computer. This is most frequently asked question, and you consider this as an important question from this chapter also. Define data and information, or how data is different than this information, or write the difference between data and information. Next we'll see the next question. What is file organization? Mention the different types. You have to understand one thing. This will be for 1 marks. If we have mentioned the types of file organization, then that will be for another 1 mark. So in the system design, so it will going to choose in order to organize, access and process records and files in a different ways. That will going to be depends upon the type of application and the need of user. That will be considered as what? File organization. It will going to take place, or that means they are organizing, they are allowing us to access and process the records as well as the file. That will be based on what? So it will be based on the type of a application and based on the requirement of a user. That means who is the user, what kind of application they want. Based on that, they are going to allow us in order to access and in order to control or to organize, process the records and file. So then that process, organization of all those files and records will be considered as what? File organization. Then what are the types we have? So we have sequential organization or sequential file organization, and also we have a direct file organization, indexed sequential access method. So in short, it will be ISAM, very important concept from this chapter. So that is index sequential access method. So these are the 3 methods that we have in a file organization. Let me move on to the next question, that is regarding explain logical two-tier client server architecture. So here they're asking us to explain the two-level, that is two-tier client-server architecture. So when you are explaining any kind of data model, when you are explaining any kind of architecture, then somehow it will be convenient if you explained with an example, if you explained with a diagrammatic representation. So here it is somehow like a master slave. So server will be there and number of clients will be there. They are just going to approach the server and this server will going to help the clients in order to process their requirement. So that is what two-tier client-server architecture. We'll see the points here. Two-tier client-server architecture is used for user interface program and application program that run on client side. It will going to be run on the client side that needs to satisfy the requirement of a customer or a client. So we are going to approach the server, then that server will going to process our request, then it will send the response back to the client. Then an interface called ODBC, that means what? Open Database Connectivity, that will going to provide an API that allows client-side program to call the Dbms. That ODBC line, it will going to act as the interface between the client and a server. So that will going to help us, or it will going to act as a API, that is application program interface. Then that allows the user in order to talk with or in order to communicate with a Dbms. So when we are dealing with this two-tier client-server architecture, at that time most of the activities will going to be done by the client side. That means they are going to get the data dictionary optimization. All these options will going to be given to the clients. That is what two-tier client-server architecture. We'll see the next question. With the diagram, describe any two components of ER diagram. So already explained. So we have three kinds of elements in a ER diagram. So that includes entity, attributes, as well as we have a relationship. Out of that we have to explain any two. So with the diagram we have to explain. So here for your convenience I am giving the extra information. That means what do you mean by, for example, if I am giving any question related to ER diagram, I just wanted to cover all the points which can be covered in the particular question. So here what you are supposed to write, for example, we have an entity and also we have a attribute. So before going to that entity and attribute, I must know what is ER diagram is all about. So that ER diagram is a visual representation of data that will going to describe how data is related to each other. So it's just a representation or a visual representation of a data, how one data is related to another data. And also we have three kinds of components in the ER diagram, that includes entity, attribute and relationship. So when it comes to the entity, that can be anything. For example, can I take this as an entity? Yes. Can I take a table as an entity? Yes. So that is what an entity can be: any object, place, even person or a class. So it can be anything. So then how we are going to represent this entity? That too with the help of rectangle. So that rectangles are named with an entity set, they are going to represent. For example, if I am taking a student as my entity, then within this rectangle box I am just going to write the student. So this is how we are going to represent an entity. Next we have attribute here. So attributes are nothing but its property. For example, if I consider a student as my entity, then what it consists of? Student will going to have a student ID, name will be there and their date of birth will be there. So their roll number will be there. Those are all the attributes that specifies their properties. So that is what in the attribute. So it specifies a property or characteristics of an entity. Then how we are going to represent? With the ellipse. This is how we are going to represent the elements of ER diagram. Let me move on to the next question. Mention the different types of relationships in Dbms. We are talking about the Dbms relationship. What kind of relationship it has? So it has a binary relationship, it has a recursive relationship and it has a ternary relationship. So when it comes to the binary, one to one, one to many to many and many to one. So those are the relationships which comes under binary. So that it has one to one and one to many, and we have many to one and we have many to many. So these kind of relationships which can be seen in this binary relationship. So totally binary, recursive, and we have ternary. So these are the different types of relationship that can be maintained with DBMS. We'll see the next question. Define candidate key and foreign key. As I told, all the definition of keys are important. Already we got to know about the primary key. So now we'll see about this candidate key. So when more than one or group of attributes serve as a unique identifier, they are each called as candidate key. So I'm just going to make a collection of one or more columns, and then I will make that as my candidate key. That will going to help me out in order to uniquely identify the row or a record in a table. So that is candidate key. It is just similar to primary key, but at the point of time I'm not considering that as primary key. Okay, that is related to candidate key. So what do you mean by foreign key then? So when my primary key will going to be there in any of the other table, then I am going to consider that as a foreign key. Okay. So for example, when you are in the India at that time, you are going to be considered as what? Citizen of an India. But when you move outside of this country, then you will be the foreigner. In the same way, if I have a primary key in my table, then for that particular table, that will be the primary key. So when that primary key column goes to any other table, then that will be considered as a foreign key. So the key used to link two tables together is called a foreign key, and it is also considered as what? Referencing key. So foreign key is a field that matches the primary key column of another table. This is how we are supposed to write. We'll see the next question. Mention the DBMS user. Who all will be there in a DBMS? Who all will be considered as a DBMS user? For example, so we are going to have the DBMS users called application programmers and system analyst. So we have a programmers and we must also have a system analyst, and also it consists of end user. So if I am doing some of the software, or if I am preparing some of the software, there must be some people who needs to get the benefit out of that software. Then they are the end users. Then we have a database administrator, that is DBA, and also we have database designers. So we have application programmers, we have analysts, we have end users, we have database administrator, and also we have a database designer. So how to remember all these things? First, I must have a database administrator, right? So after this database administrator, if I wanted to do some of the projects, or if I wanted to develop any of the database, or if I wanted to work with the database management system, then I must analyze what are the criteria I'm supposed to follow. So then I must have a analyst. So after this analysis, then I have to design. So once design is got over, that needs to be programmed by some of the programmer. Everything got over. Now I require the user in order to use all those applications. So administrator will going to take care about all these users. That is regarding DBMS user. So now we'll see the next question. Define normalization. Mention its types. What do you mean by normalization here? Let's see the definition. Normalization is the process of organizing a data in a database. How I am going to organize the data in my database will be considered as what? Normalization. What are the types of normalization we have? So we have first normal form. So in short, it will be 1NF. Then what is the second one? That is second normal form. It is 2NF. And we have third normal form, that is 3NF, and we have boys code normal form, that is BCNF. So we have 4 types in this normalization. It's all about most frequently asked 2 marks question. So now let me see this 5 marks question. This is very important question, and somehow you can consider this as a short question. How can we say that? Because this is most frequently asked question from this chapter, that is differentiate between manual and electronic data processing. So you have to write any 5 points of this differences, like manual data processing, the volume of data which can be processed is limited in a desired time. But here anyway it will going to be takes where with the computer, so that the volume of data which can be processed can be very large. It will be minimum or limited here, it will be very large there. Then manual data processing requires large quantity of paper, because it's like a human work and it requires everything manually, so the paperwork will going to be more. So here we are just going to use the amount of paper which will be lesser than this manual. And also the speed and accuracy at which job is executed is limited. Speed and accuracy somehow will be limited, because everything will going to be done by human, but here job executed is faster and it will be accurate. And also labor cost is higher, but here it will be low or economical. Then here storage medium is paper. I'm just going to use some of the secondary storage devices like hard disk, and I'm going to use pen drive, CD. So those are all will be my storage medium. So this is the important 5 marks question. So next we have one more question that is related to 5 marks. Mention any 5 applications of Dbms. That means where and all we are going to use Dbms. So it includes banking, water meter billing, rail and airlines, colleges, credit card transaction, finance, sale, telecommunication, manufacturing, human resources. And the question will also be like this, like explain any 5 application of database. So you must be okay enough in order to write the description for all these application, so that it will be in the sector of banking, water meter billing, rail and airlines, and also will be in colleges, credit card transaction, finance, sales, telecommunication, human resources, and also in the manufacturing. We'll see the next question. What is data warehouse? List the components of data warehouse. So this question can also be asked for 1 marks as well as 2 marks. That means list any one of the component of data warehouse, can be asked for 2 marks, or mention any one component of data warehouse. In that way also you are going to get. I'm just explaining all the important concepts from this chapter. It can be asked for any marks. It can be for 1, 2 or for 5. What do you mean by data warehouse here? Already we got to know the definition of this data warehouse, and mainly we are going to use this data warehouse in order to facilitate the reporting and also to support the data analysis. It was invented in the year called 1980s. So what are the components that can be included in this data warehouse? So it includes data source, data transformation will be there, reporting, metadata, and also we have operations, and also we have some of the optional components. But when you are learning all these points, you must be able to understand the description of each points here. So all these are the components of data warehouse. Next, what does Dbms? Explain its features. So what do you mean by Dbms? As I told earlier, there is a difference between the database and Dbms. So that is database management system. So as we all know that database is nothing but it is a collection of logically organized data or logically related data. But if I wanted to organize, or if I wanted to manage all those things or all those database, then I require one software. So that software is considered as what? Database management system. That will going to manage the number of databases. That is the difference between Dbms as well as the database. So Dbms is a software that allows creation, definition and manipulation of the database. What are the features it will going to include? So redundancy can be minimized or controlled with the help of this Dbms, and also it ensures the data integrity. So then we have a data sharing. So data sharing it will going to have a centralized database, so that it will going to be shared by number of user at a time, and also it provides a database security. So when it is accessing by n number of clients or n number of application, then there must be a security. Then ease of application development, so that by using this Dbms or a database management system, it will be easy in order to develop an application. And also multiple user interface at a time, it will going to be allowed the user number of user in order to access the content of database. This is regarding what is Dbms, and write the features of Dbms. What is Dbms will be for 1 mark, and its feature if you have explained, you are going to get another 4 marks. Then we'll see the next question. Explain serial and sequential file organization. So here you have to write some of the point like what is serial file accessing or file organization, what are its advantages, and what is sequential access method, that is ISAM. As I told, it is very important topic. It can be asked for what 1 mark, like abbreviate or give the acronym for ISAM, and also can be asked for what 2 marks. What you mean by briefly explain ISAM. So in that way you have to learn for this question. So here they're asking serial as well as the sequential file organization. So when it comes to the serial file organization is continuous and it will be simple. So data processing, which requires the use of all the records, is best suited to use this method. When I wanted to access all the records of a directory, or when I wanted to access or to process all the list of records, then the serial file organization is important, and that will be more convenient than any other type. So advantages, if I consider, fast access to the next record and stored in economical storage media, easy to do the file backup facilities. So when it comes to the ISAM, that is index sequential file organization, it's a combination of sequential file organization and index file organization. So that it also referred as ISAM, indexed sequential access method. So abbreviation is also important. So here data is stored physically in adjacent storage locations, and there exists a logical relationship between or among the data which will going to be stored using this ordering field. And also an additional file will going to be called as index file that would be created, which contains n number of record. So it will be more convenient to access or to organize, to manipulate everything of that n number of records can be easily done with the help of this ISAM. Let me move on to the next question, that is define the following database terms. That includes attribute, tuple, domain, primary key, foreign key. Already we got to know regarding this primary key, foreign key as well as tuple, and also we know about this attribute, right? So that describes the property or characteristics of an entity. Then what do you mean by tuple here? That is a single entry in a table is called record or tuple. And also we know about this domain. So set of values for an attribute in that column. So if I consider this as a table that has number of columns and rows, so whatever the value that I am going to write for a particular column, that set of values will be considered as what? Domain. And also we have primary key. Already we discussed regarding this primary key as well as the foreign key. Let's see the next question. What is data model? Explain any one data model. So what is data model here? It is a collection of conceptual tools for describing data, data relationship and data semantics and its constraints. So that in order to have a collection of its conceptual data, in order to describe the data, in order to have a data relationship, and in order to get to know that its semantics and its constraints or set of rules and regulation, we are going to use this data model. So it has three types: hierarchical model, network model and relational model. So out of this you can explain any one in order to get 5 marks. So here I have taken hierarchical data model. It will going to work like a tree-like structure. So the connection between one node to n number of nodes will be there. So that hierarchical data model organizes the data in a tree structure. So that in this data model, data is represented by a collection of records and the relationships are represented by links. So in this model, each entity has only one parent but can have several children. It will be tree-like structure. Several children will be there. At the top of hierarchy, there is only one entity which is called as a root node. From this root node, all the child node or a children node will going to be derived. This is what related to hierarchical data model. We'll see the next question. Explain data processing cycle. So before that, you have to understand this diagram, like what data processing cycle consists of. So we have to collect. That means we have to collect the data from different sources. Then I need to give this as an input. So once I give this as an input, then I have to get to know what are the process that has to be takes place. So that is processing here. So when I'm doing the process, it has to be moved from storage to process, and once I done with the process, it needs to be outputted. That means output. So when I done with this output, that has to reach to the user at a particular time. That is, we are going to use that for communication purpose. So that we have data collection method, and we require data input and also data processing. That processings are like cleaning, taking of data whichever is required, which is not required. We are going to do some blending there in the data processing. So after that, it has to be stored somewhere for further use, or it needs to be accessed frequently when we are doing the processing. So it has to be in some storage space, and we have to give the result. After the processing, whatever the result that we are going to get needs to be represented to the user. It should be in understandable form. So when I'm giving the input, that needs to be understood by the computer in order to process, or to the database management system in order to process that data. But whatever the output that I'm getting, so that must be understood by the client or the user. That is what output here. And at last we have a communication. So we are going to use all these data and information and a collection of logical data for the communication purpose. This is what you have to write along with this diagram. Next question, explain the 3-level RDBMS architecture. So what are the 3 level? It consists of mainly, it has physical level, that is also considered as what? Internal level, and we have conceptual level, that is logical level, and also we have view level, that is external level. Already I told you, that means we got this question, right? Which level has more abstraction, that is view level or external level. Then which level will going to have least abstraction, that is physical level or internal level. So here I have explained each level which already we have done in the concept class. Get back to the concept class and learn all these points. And also we have last level, that is view level. So along with this beautiful architecture, you have to explain each level of the 3-level RDBMS architecture. So this is how you are supposed to answer these kind of question. It's all about today's session. I hope you all understood. Let me meet you in the next session. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.